Good morning, it's Monday, August 18th, 2014. This is Tech Talk Today, episode 44, and my name is Chris. And prepare your wrist. Get a little bit of extra space on that wrist for our first story, and prepare your minds for our excellent Mumble Consortium, our Mumble Council. Time-appropriate greetings, Mumble citizens.
Time-appropriate greeting.
Boy, we have our crew is still staging this morning. Look at that. We have only a few folks in the Mumble room. It is a Monday, and that's totally understandable, so no judgy, you guys. Let's jump into the first story. It's actually news that broke over the weekend, which doesn't happen too often, but for at least a brief period of time, Best Buy had a little boo-boo, and they popped up the new Moto 360 smartwatch on the Best Buy website for $249 and outed the features of the device. It was then pulled later on because it was a bit of an accident. So we've all been expecting this pretty soon, and there's even been an event scheduled for September 4th, which is coincidentally 1 week before Apple's big event. But Best Buy just went ahead and posted all of it. And so here's what you would get for $249 if you get a Moto 360 smartwatch. You get Bluetooth 4.0. It's going to be voice activated. It'll support vibration alert. It's going to have a 1.5 backlit LCD touchscreen running at 320 by 290. Built-in optical heart rate monitor. That's interesting. Built-in pedometer. Of course, a digital watch interface. It's waterproof up to 3.3 feet for about 30 minutes. It has a built-in lithium-ion battery, which the battery indicator will let you know it needs to be charged, and they will supposedly support wireless charging. And it'll have a Texas Instruments fast processor. $249, it'll run the same version of Android that all of the watches run, so it's really just differentiated by the hardware. It'll have a screen DPI of 205, which is, or PPI, sorry, pixels per inch. And it will use Gorilla Glass 3, which is actually brand new. I don't know of anything that's, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know of anything that's shipping with it. $250. Oh, and you'll have to have, let's see, I think it's Android 4.4. Oh, Android 4.3. So, Android 4.3, anybody not have at least Android 4.3 in our Mumble room? Anybody running that has Android running something older than 4.3 in here? Is that even a thing anymore?
I know my wife, I think, runs a very old phone with Android 3, I think.
See, here's why I don't think this is a big deal about the older phones. Because if you got a phone that has that old of a version of Android, are you even really going to be in the market for a watch like this? I mean, aren't you at that point probably not a type of person that's into this kind of stuff?
Yeah, my wife uses a gingerbread Android 2.3.
Yeah. How's that?
It's a Kindle Fire. It was the first generation Kindle Fire.
Oh, right. Yeah, they're stuck there.
Yeah, she would not be interested at all in a smartwatch.
Do you have problems?
That's the type of person she is.
Do you have problems now with certain apps that you can't have on there? Have you had a cutoff, or is everything still pretty much support that version of Android?
For what she uses it for, what she gets, the apps she downloads, she doesn't have a problem. Like, especially if she's downloading a game app or something, there's no problem whatsoever.
So, McCabe's pointing out the Samsung Galaxy S3 Mini, pretty popular phone, is Android 4.14. It's a bit of a bummer.
That's a little ancient there.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to say. I know I've been kind of hard on the smartwatch thing. I like the round display. I like it a lot. I think that is a good-looking display. Here's my problem with the round display. It is a fantasy, I think. I don't think it can be done yet. I don't think we're there yet. I think if the whole world was using something fancy like QT and QML, maybe we'd be there. But because the whole world is not using something fancy like QT and QML, we are not there. And what is going to happen with the Moto 360, and this would drive me absolutely crazy as a Moto 360 user, is the edges, the bottom at least, is cut off. I'm trying to load this display, but it's not working on their site right now.
I was just about to mention that.
Would that drive you crazy?
Compared to the square watches, absolutely. Absolutely, because I would know just in the back of my mind, it's not getting as much pixel space as the square watches are.
Right, there's a little cutoff at the bottom, and that means everybody who's designing one of these watch UIs has to consider that some users will have a square display and some users will have a round display with the bottom cut off. So then how do you avoid building like the lowest common denominator UI when you do that?
Well, in my opinion, it needs to go down to the OS level, and the OS needs to be able to compensate for that.
Yeah, maybe scrunch things up.
Yeah, the OS needs to be tailor-made. Well, know that it doesn't have as much pixel space because it's on a round display, and then compensate. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I really do like the round display aspect. I'd have always liked that. I love the
It's
old
classy.
TV. Yeah, exactly. Old TV sets that were around, I think, look great. I'm still sitting in the camp of waiting to show me why I need this right now. I don't think. Here's the other thing: is a lot of this is predicated on how amazing Google Now is. These watches really, if Google Now, let's all pretend for a second like Google Now is actually an invaluable service, and that it's actually worth Google mining every single aspect of our online presence as much as they can, pushing the bounds constantly. Let's pretend for a second that's the reality. Then maybe something like this would be genuinely useful, because I am a forgetful person, because I got a lot going on, and it's really there's a lot of things that are out of sight, out of mind, and I forget them all the time. And a device that could expose those little elements of my life that are hidden away in my inbox, like reminders or calendar events that maybe my wife set up that's on our shared calendar, that would be very beneficial. My phone can do that now, but even now, like, that's not getting the job done. If I had something that was more directly connected to Now that could vibrate my wrist from time to time, I would find that useful. The reality is, as somebody who's been using Google Now since it was a product, since it was in early stages of development, I have to tell you that about 60% of Google Now is useful on average for me. But and that really comes down to the package shipments and the once or twice a year when I give a crap about an air flight. That's about the 2 times. The weather is, I could have a widget on my Android device that does that for me already. And a lot of that other stuff, I could have other methods. Often the other things it tries to guess about me, like the fact that it continues to think that I give a crap about sports. It continues to shove sports scores in my feeds. Stock quotes I don't give a crap about. News events I don't give a crap about. Updates about websites I don't give a crap about continually show up in my Google Now feed. I sit there and I remove them constantly, and I'm getting tired of it. I don't want another quote-unquote feed that I have to maintain. And if that kind of crap is going to be pushed to my watch, that takes this watch from something that's useful to something that's just now full of crap. And that makes it even worse to me. So in order for this watch to be valuable, Google Now needs to be more valuable. And I'm not buying off on the mantra that's coming out of Silicon Valley and all of the tech press that report out of there, that are all telling us that Google Now is this unbelievable service and it's so valuable. That's crap. It's useful, but it needs to be a hell of a lot more useful to justify the level of invasiveness that is required to make Google Now possible. And maybe that, it's just a slow build and I'll just have to eventually get it there. But I'm not sure I'm ready to buy a $250 watch that's attached to my arm constantly, pulling power and data from my phone all the time to send a feed of stuff that Google Now thinks I want to see. That doesn't sound like something I want.
I'm with you on the watch aspect, as far as that goes, constantly notifying you. Now, the thing about the sports scores is you can disable that. That's pretty easy to do. The other thing is that, like, for me, I really like it when I have, like, an address in a calendar appointment. It will tell me when I need to leave to make it there on time.
That's what I say. I think about 60% of Google Now is pretty useful to me. And, like, the sports scores stuff, I find that it's gone until I set up a new device or I reflash my my Nexus 5, and then my sports scores are back, and it seems like that would be profile specific and not device specific, and I don't really understand how that works. And
yeah, you're right. It's not profile specific. It is device specific, because I had to do that on my tablet and my Nexus 5.
Why would they do it like that? That seems really weird. Anyways,
I don't know.
But you know what is, like, part of me though is kind of like, well, I'm glad that's not $400, right? I think that's a really good thing. And number 2 is, obviously, this is one of those things where it'll hit the market, and then over a period of a couple of years, it'll be refined into possibly a must-have product. And it doesn't, just because it's not a must-have product in 2014 doesn't mean that by the end of 2015 it won't be obvious that everybody's phone now comes with a watch, right? I mean, it might come to a point where you don't even buy one without considering the other. Who knows?
It'll come with the contract of your phone.
Yeah, maybe, right? Maybe the carriers will subsidize it.
What I was thinking was that, this is just a rule of thumb I have. If it's a first generation device, do not buy it. Get the second generation, and so on.
Go ahead.
At this point, I think that I've tried using Nokia Launcher instead of Google Now, and I really haven't seen a major hit in the utility of my Android phone.
Interesting. Well, while we're talking about alternative launchers to Android devices, let's stay in this thread just for one more minute. We've talked a lot about Huawei or Xiaomi. I'm not quite exactly sure what the pronunciation is because it starts with an X. They're that Chinese mobile company that is really rocking it in China right now, that's really eating Samsung's lunch and now going after Apple in the high end. They have come under considerable criticism over the last few weeks for ripping Apple off. You guys know how like Samsung was known for ripping Apple off in the early days with the Galaxy Tab, like they'd copy iOS and they copied the charger and all that kind of stuff. Xiaomi, man, they go all in. Their CEO wears a black shirt with blue jeans. He goes up on stage and he says one more thing at the end of his keynotes. I mean, it's pretty hardcore. They use Apple's icons on their website. Like they'll use like actual product images. They'll go to Apple's website and take the product images and use it on their site. And then they have the nuts to come out and say all the time, "We are not copying Apple. No way." In fact, we talked about Hugo last week, the old Google executive who left working at the head of Android and went over to Xiaomi, and he's come out on a piece from the next website. No. I mean, we might be a little inspired by Apple, but we're totes not copying. Well, as this interview has hit the web, something else has hit the web. The new version of MIUI, which is MIUI is MyOS. MyOS is Xiaomi's OS. It connects with the MyCloud and MyMessage and MyDisk, and you can use these My services with your Xiaomi device using MyOS. So here is the new screenshots of the new version of MyOS 6, and it looks pretty nice. It actually, to me, as a Linux user, really reminds me a lot of the Numix theme, a lot of Numix look to this. A lot of people are like, oh, they're ripping off Apple. On these shots here, I'm like, to me, this looks more like they're ripping off of the Linux desktop a little bit. When you scroll down, though, you start to see something. You realize these are not screenshots right here from iOS 8. These are screenshots from the MIUI 6 new release. These look like one-to-one, some of these, like the calendar and the calculator and the keyboard, the settings screen, look like one-to-one ripoffs of iOS. Pretty crazy. So we might have a whole nother round of lawsuits coming. Even the camera app looks a lot like the iOS camera app.
Perhaps lawsuits, but I don't know how far they're gonna go because that would just block them from being sold in the US.
Right.
They can't do anything outside, like in China. They can't do anything there.
I mean, even the font colors are the same. Like the way they have recents and contacts in the contact list are the same. The type, even the font is the same. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah, this will probably never hit the U.S. market just because Apple would get it blocked.
Yeah, and the chat room is pointing out this is regular Android they've made look pretty nice. I mean, it does look quite nice, and it's in some ways cleaner than iOS. It's like Numix meets iOS in some ways. It's kind of nice. All right, and then one last Android story. I know. Too much Android, but I found this next story to be rather fascinating. By the way, we have screenshots to some of those most egregious ones in the show notes if you're curious, if you're listening to the audio version. This is nuts. According to IDC, the total combined market share now of Android and iOS for mobile markets is 96.4%. That's in the just from the last quarter, and that's up from 92.6% a year ago. That left just 2.5% of the market to Windows Phone, down from 3.4% last year. Unfortunately for Microsoft Windows Phone, Apple iOS devices dominated the high end of the market, while Android, with 84.7% of the global market operating system share, tended to dominate low-end, sub-$200 markets. That left precious little room for Windows Phone, even though the recent efforts to lower the platform's licensing costs should have helped propel it into the market. With many OEM partners focusing on the sub-200 segments, Android has been reaping huge gains in emerging markets, according to a research manager at IDC. During the second quarter, 58.6% of all Android smartphone shipments worldwide cost $200 off contract. 58.6% of Android phones were $200 off contract that were sold. That's huge. Look at that. That is going after the low end with like a machete. The most recent introduction of Android One, where Google offers sub-designs below $100, I mean, we could really see this explode. And the charts are showing massive gains. Right here you can see iOS in the high end is unbelievable. If you're buying a phone above $400, it's almost universally an iPhone. Look at this chart. It's incredible. And then Android, if you're buying just a huge chunk of the mid-low range market, huge chunk. And then iOS just has the very top there. And you can see, boy, Windows Phone. If it does well at all, it's in the low-end market, the really low-end market. But there it's under such competition from Android. And then in the mid-range market, it's not doing so good. In the high-end range market, it's doing really bad. Windows Phone's doing really bad in the high end. So the only market it's doing any good in is the market it's competing the most directly with Android, where they're getting their asses kicked. And now that Android One has come around, that might just take the legs out from underneath Windows Phone, which is now struggling with 2.5% of the market. I don't even know where that leaves BlackBerry because they didn't bother.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is astounding. I'm just looking at how close together those bars on Android and Windows Phone are, and it's just like they're almost identical. Yeah,
it's like Apple's got to be happy because anywhere that's going to make them a good chunk of money, they're selling to, and they're keeping Windows out of that area. And Google's got to be happy because the more people you get, the more signals you get, and that's exactly what they want from the Android platform. And you can see how Android One is going to be a huge stroke of a master chess move for them, because it's going to give them control over the area that's growing the most rapidly. And if it really took off, they could expand it to be the mainline Android. So, interesting.
Oh yeah, I would love to see where like Firefox OS would fit into that as well, or even Ubuntu Touch.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so this is why I'm so pessimistic about those. When you see these numbers here, and now you have Google, who's been rumored to talk with HP about setting up an enterprise deal. You got Apple working with IBM on an enterprise deal, and Microsoft, the supposed enterprise vendor, is just sitting it out. They're just like sitting the whole thing out. It's unbelievable. And you'd think they would be the ones in position. You know what they need? A superhero. That's why I thought we'd do our last story, just as a fun one. I think OMG Ubuntu maybe needed something to post, and they posted this: if Linux distros were superheroes, and then what distro would be which superhero. So all right, Mumble Room, you guys feel free to chime in. We'll start. They said that Ubuntu is Superman. Okay. All right. Okay. Kubuntu is Batman. I like the art that Joey did here for these. These are nice. I think Joey did these. I don't know. Oh, no, it says down there who did them. Let's see. Lubuntu is the Flash. Okay. Because
it runs fast. It makes sense.
Ubuntu GNOME is Green Lantern. Elementary OS is Aquaman. Linux Mint. Linux Mint is Martian the Manhunter. Linux Mint, yeah. So what do you guys think? Did you guys agree? Is Ubuntu Superman and I could see Batman being Kubuntu, actually.
Oh yeah, I could too, especially utility belt.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly.
I could see Batman being a Plasma Active user.
Yeah. Well, one thing I thought was funny, and Rotten Corpse, my fellow producer, pointed this out. He said that this is not Linux as superheroes. This is Ubuntu as superheroes.
Yeah, it's omgubuntu.com, right?
Oh,
so,
which makes sense.
Yeah.
As far as Elementary OS being Aquaman, if I think about the Big Bang Theory and their reference to Aquaman, it's basically Aquaman is irrelevant. He sucks.
Wow.
That kind of thing.
I was thinking maybe because the OS 10 UI is called Aqua.
Oh, that's
right?
a good point. Yeah.
But that is also, yeah.
I thought that was hilarious, and it wasn't me that pointed that. I was actually reading on my Google Plus feed, and Daniel Fora pointed that out himself. So.
All right, okay, I got an idea. Arch Linux is Iron Man because you can build it like a small, like it could just be the pulse in his chest, or you could build like a huge suit of armor. So Arch Linux is Iron Man.
It's modular, yeah.
Yeah, right. You like that? And then
I like that.
I think they're sticking to the DC heroes because they're within the Ubuntu family.
That's
right. For the other distros, we got to go with
Marvel. That's what I was thinking. You got to go Marvel for the other guys. So we got to figure out who the Hulk is. The audience should tell us. This should be an exercise for the audience. Really is. Okay, so OMG Ubuntu has taken care of the Ubuntu derivatives. So now let's give attention to some of the other guys out there: Fedora, Debian, SUSE, Arch, all of your favorite distros out there. What superheroes are there? But you have to. Here's the one requirement: stay within the Marvel universe. That's a requirement. And if you can, post it to the subreddit. Go over to techtalktoday.reddit.com and look for episode 44 and drop it in there. Make your case. Make your case, because if you make a compelling case, we will read it on the air for the court of public opinion. And then if everyone agrees, we will proclaim that to be the official superhero for that distribution right here on the resource of record, Tech Talk Today, right? That seems fair, you guys, you think? I think we go
like
for that. Okay.
That's great.
Fair enough.
All right, before we run, I just wanted to mention the Patreon page. You guys know this is one way you can directly rock support for the entire Jupiter Broadcasting Network. If you don't like all the commercials, if you don't want us to add more commercials, if you want us to keep it a little weird, and also if you want us to be responsible to report to you, patreon.com/today. You can pledge. It's a monthly donation. It goes towards the infrastructure, the cost, the operating cost, the running cost of a network. Little things that come up all the time that if I would have known before I started this whole shindig, I might not have ever done. But now I'm already all the way down this, and we want to make it work, and we want to grow the network, add more content, but really even focus on the content we have and add more to it all the time. And I think realistically, over the last few months, you guys have been seeing that. We've been having more and more content constantly. It's just been getting better and better, and I'm really super proud of that. And your support is enabling that. You can go over to patreon.com/today. That supports this show and the entire Jupiter Broadcasting Network. And there is some cool swag coming up too. If you didn't catch the news, in Friday we had a special Friday edition of Tech Talk Today last week since we missed an episode. Well, two actually, but I could only make up one. So we did a special Friday edition, and we talked about some of the cool pledge stuff that's coming, and there is still time to qualify. If you jump into the swag level pledge amount for the month of August and have a successful August transaction, you will be qualified. Right there. That's all. You could cancel later on if you wanted to, or drop it down to a lower pledge level if that was more in your budget range. We have some built-in pledges there, or any amount you can afford. Patreon.com/today. That keeps us on the air, keeps us going, and keeps it a little weird. I'll admit it. That is part of the goal. Okay, guys, we're going to wrap it up right here. Don't forget, you can join us live, Tech Talk Today, over at jblive.tv, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, every day, Monday through Thursday, techtalktoday.reddit.com. That's the subreddit. You can go there and give us some ideas of what you'd like to see covered in the show today at jupiterbroadcasting.com. That's more of your long-form thoughts or something you just want to tell me in private. You can send it today at jupiterbroadcasting.com, or you can also always put that feedback in the subreddit, where we do check that more frequently. Myself and the producers are always in there, so you have a better chance of getting caught in the subreddit. Okay, so we were talking about smartwatches. Let's go back in time and look at our father's generation, perhaps, or maybe your generation, depending on your age, and the smartwatch of yesteryear.
My husband's a sweetheart, but he can't remember a thing. That's why I got him a Casio Databank watch and Casio Data Calculator. What's your phone number, Walter?
5550700.
When's our anniversary?
It's tomorrow.
Very good, Walter.
To remember card numbers, access codes, up to 50 things, get a Casio.
Now Walter can forget about having to remember anything. Almost.